into coaching, and I did my coaching qualifications. And after leaving my job at Reading University, I set up my own coaching business, which I think it's fair to say was probably unsuccessfully successfully. It grew too much too quickly, and actually it was almost too popular. And so I ended up selling it really because I couldn't cope with the demand for it. And then got a job working for Portsmouth Football Club, which was an incredible experience. We won the FA Cup there, but then they got into some financial difficulties, which I think were well publicised at the time. And I took on a role in a school, a fantastic school called King Edward's School Whitley, which is based in Surrey, which is an independent school that looks after a lot of children that come from very, very sad and disadvantaged backgrounds through bursary schemes. And working there was a fantastic experience for me as director of football. And in fact, I very much changed the way they saw football at the school and used it as a tool to develop a lot of those children. And we went on actually to become national champions, which was an incredible achievement in itself. But again, it was all about performance and trying to get the most out of the children there, get them enjoying their sport, their football, which was a huge release for many of them. I suppose that view of performance that I got originally from my dad has really led me into horse racing, because although it was very much an interest of mine, it was only really when I started to look at my football and started to think about how I could develop my own football coaching that I started to look at other sports. And I was fascinated by horse racing because the athletes don't speak your language and you can't communicate with them. And I decided it would be very interesting to get into racehorse stables and understand how they are able to get the most out of their athletes, i.e. the horses, on a given time, on a given place. And so I decided that the best way to do that would be to join a horse racing syndicate. And I joined Foxtrot Racing and became a member because they had a horse in stables very close to King Edward's School, which was in Chiddingfold in Surrey. And I went and quizzed the trainer, who was a chap called Ollie Stevens, who's now actually assistant to Alan King, about how he trained and the way he trained. And I spent a long time on the gallops, really trying to develop myself as an educator and football coach. But in doing so, I think my love for racing grew and developed. And I found it became more and more part of my life and more a sport that I wanted to become involved in.
So, Dan, you now run Foxtrot Racing, a syndicate organisation primarily on the jumps, over the jumps. How long have you been running Foxtrot Racing?
I've been running Foxtrot Racing for 10 years. As I mentioned earlier, I joined a syndicate because I wanted to sort of understand a little bit more about how trainers operate and get the best out of their horses. It was at the time run by Tom Gittins, who's a very, very good syndicate manager, but I would often point out to him things that I thought could be improved. And I think it shows you need to be careful what you wish for, because one day he rang me up and said, Dan, my nephew runs the family business. They've become ill, very seriously ill. I need to go and step into that family business. And of course, syndicates aren't something you can just stop doing because the horses are in training. You've got obligations to the syndicate members. And he said, I need someone to take over today. And I thought, well, yeah, why not? You know, when you're coaching football, you do have quite a bit of time to yourself. And I thought, what a great experience. Literally, I woke up one day and by that evening, I was a syndicate manager.
Well, that's an amazing story about how you got into it. It reminds me of, remember Victor Kiam, the guy who owned the American Shaver Company? I liked the company so much I bought it. That seems to be your tale, really. That you started off owning a share and then actually took over the company. That's lovely. Now, of course, we know each other through the RSA, Racehorse Syndicates Association Committee. How did you actually become chair of the RSA, or how did you get onto the RSA in the first place?
Well, when I took over Foxtrot Racing, there was an early association, which now is known as the RSA, which only had 12 members. It was originally established by Tony Hill, that's known to run Elite Racing, Axum, and the Owners Group. And the idea really was to try and bring together people that run syndicates to provide a sort of collective voice, I suppose, really to sort of promote their own interests, as it were. And so there were only 12 members at the time, but the association really wasn't going anywhere. And I think everyone would agree that was involved at that stage that although we had meetings and chatted, we didn't really have any weight behind us. And the idea of actually having any influence on the industry was just fantasy, really. And one day at the AGM, I think I spoke to the chairman, who was John Penny at the time, and said to him, look, I think if we're going to do this, let's do it properly. And again, it's one of those things you probably put your foot in it a little bit. And well, if you think we should do it properly, you do it. And by the end of that meeting, I'd been elected chairman. So it again another example of you need to be careful what you say. So I became chairman, and since then, I think the association, not due to any efforts of mine, but has now developed from those 12 members. I think we've got sort of 80 members now, and a very hard-working committee. And it's an association that I think has grown and developed over that time because of the hard work of those people that are involved.
Absolutely. Now, look, I ought to bring Phil in now as our national hunt man, really, because I know he's got a few questions he'd like to ask you about. I think you had a couple of runners at the festival. So,
thanks, Simon. Yeah, Dan, Simon and I have been talking quite a lot about experience for owners at the moment while they can't attend the racing. Obviously, you had the ultimate version of that with runners at the festival, where normally people would love to be there, sucking up the atmosphere, etc. What did you have to do or try to do to bring the experience to people who couldn't attend the festival? They must have been really disappointed they couldn't be there.
Yeah, I think everyone was disappointed that they couldn't be there. If I'm honest, though, I don't think we saw having a festival runner as anything more important than having a runner anywhere else. So really, we did what we always do, and we didn't do anything special because actually for a lot of owners, having a runner anywhere is a really exciting experience. And so I don't think just because it was Cheltenham, we did anything extraordinary. But let me sort of just explain what we did do. We had two runners, a nice horse called Witness Protection that ran in the Coral Cup, who's trained by Martin Keithley, and a horse called Hogan's Height, who ran in the cross country. And both a little bit different. And we also did slightly different things on the day for their owners. Witness Protection, we did a sort of Zoom meeting with the trainer and the jockey, James Best, before racing started, just to sort of catch up with them, get their views. But we didn't do anything directly before the race. And the reason for that is because it was a 26 runner handicap, and we were absolutely determined that we wanted to get down to the start first. We wanted to get a good position at the tapes, and we wanted to get off out into the lead at the start. And so we made a conscious decision actually not to do a Zoom from the parade ring as we'd normally do, because we wanted James and Martin to be absolutely focused on getting that horse right, getting it down to the start. So we did everything a little bit earlier in the day, but what we did do is send videos to the owners, of the horse arriving at the course, being saddled up, going around the parade ring. And then after the race, we did some interviews with the jockey James and Martin Keithley, and sent that on to the owners. And with Hogan's Height, he was having a prep run for the Grand National in Tiger Roll's race in the cross country. But so a little bit more relaxed, I think, with that runner. And we did a lot of Zooming in the parade ring. We did a Zoom afterwards and really tried to ensure that our focus was on the owners, as opposed perhaps to Witness Protection, where our focus was very much on the horse and making sure that his performance wasn't affected in any way by what we're trying to provide for the ownership experience at home.
And were you happy with how they both ran? I know Witness Protection, you obviously achieved your ambition because he was up at the front for a long way but faded late on. Were you still pleased with the way he performed?
Yeah, we're absolutely thrilled with him. He's a horse that was actually out for a year with a tendon, a very, very cheap buy. And, I think if you get into the Cheltenham Festival, it suggests you've probably had a good season. We were there hoping that he might win, but in the end, the step up in distance for him was probably just too far. The problem is when you've got a horse like him rated 130 and you get into a race at Cheltenham, you've got that decision to make. That race was on Wednesday. Do you wait and hope you get into perhaps a more suitable race later in the week, or do you declare when you know you're going to actually get in? And we knew he was getting in last in, so 26 of the 26 runners, bottom weight, and we thought, look, we can't pass this chance up because even though a shorter race later in the week might be more suitable, he probably won't get into it. So we decided to declare him for the longer race, and in the end, he didn't stay. But look, he's a lovely horse. We had a great experience that day having that runner. As you say, we provided a a good at-home experience for the owners. And Hogan's Height, he finished the best of the British, which was good. We couldn't beat the Irish, but best of the British, and he'll now head to Aintree for the Grand National, and that's hugely exciting for the syndicate and of course their family and friends, because everyone follows the National, and to be able to say to people you have got a runner or you know someone that's got a runner is going to be a real thrill for those owners.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it's something. It's a race everybody's heard of, even if they're not into racing, isn't it?
Now, we've got flat racing resuming quite soon. Really looking forward to owners getting back on the course from the 29th of March. I'd really just like to know your thoughts on how you feel syndicators and trainers have actually adapted to the world post-pandemic in terms of dealing with their owners. Do you think, by and large, they've done a good job?
I think by and large they have done a good job. We've all had to adapt in many walks of life and different areas of our life, and yeah, I think trainers very much, because owners haven't been able to get on course or to the yard, have had to change what they're doing. And racing has, as an industry, we look at things like 48-hour declarations now. I know, for the flat, we've always had that. For the jumpers, that was a new thing when COVID-19 came in. So things like 48-hour declarations now, and I'd be surprised if we go back, because although it doesn't suit everyone, I think it does suit owners. They get a little bit more notice when the horse is running, be able to make travel plans. I mentioned before, talking to Phil, about our experience at Cheltenham and doing Zooms and photos and videos for the owners. Well, we wouldn't have been allowed to do that before because of the videoing restrictions, but now they have been relaxed, so you can do those. Trainers have become better at doing videos, photos from the yard. Syndicates now are doing forums, they're doing quizzes. And I think the off-course experience that particularly syndicates have been able to offer their owners has improved so much. And it's now better than it ever has. And the pandemic really has forced us to provide a really fantastic at-home ownership experience. Now, the question probably then arises, well, is the racecourse experience better? Well, we don't know, because we've not yet really got back onto the racecourse fully. But the industry has improved the off-course experience for owners. Is it now going to improve the on-course experience? And I suppose we'll only find that out when we get back on course. But I very much hope so, because I think you learn and you improve things when adversity comes. And the industry has done that so far, and it needs to do that beyond COVID-19 as well. So interesting times ahead.
I think that's really interesting what you said, Dan, about people being on Zoom forums, trainers adapting, because I think generally the British population, and I think the British racing industry, is sort of conservative, if you like, with a small c. But it's, if you take 48-hour declarations, there was a lot of hoo-ha about that. People didn't want it, trainers didn't want it. But it's funny how actually over time people do adapt, don't they? They get used to it, they move on. And I think the examples you gave there are very illustrative. Now, look, there has been a little bit of negative press on syndicates. I hasten to add, not any of the syndicates that we run, but there has been a little bit of negative press. I touched earlier on about you wanting the RSA to be the voice of syndication. Is there a real problem, do you think, generally with syndicates in Britain?
Well, the stats speak for themselves, that there are very, very, very few complaints made about syndicates in Britain. And most of those complaints that are made, and we're talking about a handful here a year, are not about the way syndicates are run, but about the performance of horses. And with respect, that is something that no syndicate manager can control completely. So syndicates are run extremely well in Britain, and it's very important to make that clear. And unfortunately, almost because they run so well, when something comes to light where a syndicate hasn't been run, it makes the headlines because it's such a rare event. And I think anyone looking to get involved in a syndicate can have real confidence in this country that syndicates are extremely well run. And there are things that they can do to ensure that. I mean, there's the Syndicate Code of Conduct, which you can download off the BHA website or the RSA website, which is racehorse-syndicates.org. And that gives a very good opportunity to test any syndicate against that code of conduct and see if they are adhering to everything that's on there. And I'd say that if anyone is, thinking about joining a club or wants to check a syndicate is suitable for them, there's probably, I think I always advise people, there's three things to check. And that would be just understand the costs. How long are you committed for? What's it going to cost? 2 would be public liability. Just make sure you have cover for public